All right, should be live. Forge Gang! I'm a hard man! Let's go! All right, hold on a second. Something's fucking up. Okay, wait a second. Am I live or what? I can't tell if I'm live. I can't tell if I'm live. Okay, I got it. Yeah, you can hear me. All right. Forge Gang! Let's go! All right, so the title of the video is going to be PPP, the Vickers, Mormon Shaggy, and BigDadGigaChad are losing their credibility. Hold on a second. Stop the cam. Turn it back on. Try CTRL-E. Nah, it doesn't change it, dude. Okay. A happy and blessed Easter. A happy and blessed Friday for you, Hammer in the Forge. Thank you, sir. You're live and sound is good. The video is the OBS cam screen currently. Today is the Ides of July, a formidable date to tackle all these topics. Excellent. Excellent. All right, so Mormon Shaggy decided to play a video that has no audio. He claims that this video, which was about me using a camcorder to videotape some underage kids or minors on a pickup that were irritating and harassing me. And I took that video down, but BigDadGigaChad put it back up, but he didn't save the audio. And so Mormon Shaggy thought that it would be really awesome and ballsy of him to play that video on his last live stream. The problem is that when he did that, nobody supported him. Everyone in Mormon Shaggy's chat called him out as a doofus and said that there's no audio that was saved and that all it is just him and BigDadGigaChad giving their word or throwing their word, which means nothing because they don't know who the kids are. So Mormon Shaggy was like being all, big balled and tough and, like he was going to expose a pedophile and all this other crap, ludicrous shit. But what he has ended up doing is that he has already proven himself to be a liar. Mormon Shaggy and BigDadGigaChad have both effectively felted themselves by not providing the full audio of the video of the original upload. And by not potentially doing that, they have destroyed all of their credibility. They've destroyed all of their personal credibility. People are calling them out. I was watching the chat. Like nobody in Mormon Shaggy's chat actually took his side. Nobody took his side. People were posting a bunch of hammer emojis and yelling Forge Gang. Chauncey was yelling Forge Gang. Everyone was yelling Forge Gang. And also, I heard that Shaggy has doxed his sister yet again. So I've heard, I haven't watched it yet, but I heard that Shaggy has actually doxed his sister yet again, which means that he has face doxed her twice. So Shaggy thought that he was going to expose a pedophile and he was going to tackle me, but no, he tried too hard this time. Shaggy tried way too hard, and he's going down a very dark downward spiral. And what's going to end up happening is he's going to keep lying like he does in Drunken Surfers Discord, the Bible Streams Discord. He's going to keep lying and felting himself. And eventually, people are going to see him for what he is. Surfer is going to get sick of him. Toxic Angel is going to get sick of him. Everybody's going to get sick of him. I guarantee you, in 2 months from now, Burger Boy is going to be the co-host of the Cornfields. He's going to be Shaggy's replacement. Like, Mormon Shaggy is not going to be the co-host anymore. It's either going to be Burger Boy or it's going to be Hypa. It'll be one of those two. Toxic Angel is getting really tired with Mormon Shaggy's false shenanigans. Like, this guy is really losing his credibility. Now BigDadGigaChad is a nobody. Like, nobody watches his videos besides a few of his Cyrax buddies. So he's another guy that's going to sell felt in the end. He's got no audio to demonstrate evidence, and he's already validified every point that he was trying to make against me. None of it mattered. It turned out that it was not as dramatic as he made it out to be. People blew it off, and his credibility is going to falter as well. Not as bad as Mormon Shaggy's, mind you, but Mormon Shaggy is going to go down a very bad, twisted spiral. All right, so PPP. So I find out that PPP hold on a second. Burger Boy, I'm always looking for a co-host spot. That's true. I'm a good second when in support of a confident first. Well, you could always co-host something with me, bro. I'm a very confident first. But dude, I think you should co-host the Cornfields with Toxic in Shaggy's place. When Mormon Shaggy finally embarrasses and destroys his credibility and goes way too far with his lies, and everybody stops watching his shit, Toxic gets rid of him, why don't you ask Toxic to co-host the Cornfields? That'll be awesome. If he continues it in Shaggy's permanent absence. All right, so PPP apparently has not been doing any Kino Casino material. It appears that PPP has moved into some apartment in Louisiana with an e-girl or a former e-girl. He's living with an e-girl that's taking like half of his wages or half of his earnings in order to stay with her. So he's kind of being like the daimyo. A lot of similarities between daimyo and, there's a lot of similarities between the daimyo and PPP there. William Gloryhole says Toxic left YouTube, bro. He did? I don't recall him closing any of his channels or whatever, dude. Well, yeah, he did like 10 months ago, William Gloryhole, but he came back. Like, the guy just came right back. Oh, yeah, he did close the cornfields. Dude, what happened to Black Spy VR? What the hell? He's gone, dude. So it's actually true. Toxic Angel's gone. Wow. I didn't know that about Toxic Angel. Well, dude, if Toxic Angel ever does put up the cornfields again, Burger Boy should take Shaggy's place as the longtime co-host. Toxic closed his accounts and changed the name of the cornfield account to Dead Channel or something. Well, anyways, PPP apparently has not been doing No Kino Casino episodes lately because he's been felted by some other guy. I forgot his name, but PPP is like trying desperately to cover up a bunch of stuff that's gotten out about him. I found that interesting. I watched that on Surfer's latest stream about PPP. Yeah, that was it. It was Godwinson. PPP lost an argument to Godwinson or something. So did Godwinson come on to the Kino Casino and felt PPP? And because of that, PPP is not doing the Kino Casino lately? Yeah, I haven't been keeping up with it. But it turns out that Godwinson is a lot smarter than PPP thought that he would turn out to be. And PPP has lost an enormous amount of credibility of his. So yeah, that's what's been going on with that. Now to the Vickers. So when is the rest of the Vickers diary going to happen? When exactly is the Vickers diary going to be finished up reading and stuff? Like, I'm curious about when that's going to happen. I'm really interested about why it was that Vicious Vickers closed his Twitter. So I don't keep up with all of that stuff, but Faith Vickers published all of her entire diary and made it public. And PPP was going to try to talk about it, but the Daimyo and DJ Axel did it first. They did it first. So anyways, I'm not really exactly the most informed person about what happened with the Vickers. But yeah, it looks like the Vickers want to get into a lawsuit with Ethan Rolfe. So Ethan Rolfe has been saying or calling out Vicious Vickers or whatever, saying that his daughter was a whore and a Lolita, and that Ethan is real pissed off about his grandson being named Xander after Xander Luciano from Bitwave and Stream.me. I don't know how Faith Vickers knew who Xander was, but yeah, that's besides the point. So I found out that Ethan Rolfe is running across the border to Mexico to avoid paying child support, or that if he doesn't pay child support, he's going to go to prison, or he's going to go to jail for a few months. So I guess he's going to have to give in and pay child support. I don't see why exactly that's going to be too hard to do, but yeah, that's basically it. All right, so could somebody link me to Toxic's channel, bro? I subscribe to the cornfields, but what happened to Toxic? Why did he quit? Was it because of me? Was it because of me, bro? The Watcher says he said he was unplugging from VR gaming too. Interesting. Maybe his green card maybe his green card that he was carrying finally ended. Maybe his green card, he ran out of his green card time limit and he had to go back to Mexico. I had to say that. I thought it was funny to say. So yeah, Mormon shit gay. More mammon sus gay. Your friends are abandoning you left and right, bro. Your friends are abandoning you left and right, my man. What do you have to say for that, weirdo?
Oh no. Here's a little story that I fucking know. Gay rat is a motherfucking pedo. Trying to entice little kids with the fucking dough. Been busted twice for playing with her hoe. It's the gay rat fad. Looking for the...
Yeah, notice that there's no audio.
Oh, and he also tries to poor shame the child who's in a much nicer truck than which John doesn't own anything, right? John lives with his mother, he's 34, he's on Social Security. Then he tries to say he pays for this road. Look how shitty this road is. You think anybody pays for that road?
Yeah, I was trying to expose those kids for taking drugs, dumbass. And also, where's the audio?
Who done it? Who flagged Shaggy, right? Who could it have possibly been? There's many people, right? Many different people who could have fucking flagged Shaggy, who could have done that shit. And the number one suspect is Ashton, right? Ashton and Andy. You know, these fuckers know their show is imploding. And, you know, I don't think they can take. I think, you know, they truly have become thin-skinned gunts. You know, it has been proven that everything they accuse Ethan Ralph of, they do themselves only worse. So if they're accusing him of being thin-skinned, it stands to reason that they wouldn't be able to take a little prodding by some spurged out 15-viewer Andy like Mormon Shaggy. It stands to reason that the criticism levied at them by some no one like myself would be enough to you know, stick in their craw, to be a thorn in their side. And maybe having embraced the path of sleaze, they truly went the extra mile and flagged my channel. But, you know, I've accused them of this. Surfers accused them of this. The council has accused them of this. Maybe they should show their fucking flag history, right? I'm sure neither of these two have anything shady there. Right, Worsty? Anyway. Yeah, because even if they didn't flag me, I'm sure they flagged someone. Now...
Yeah, this guy is bitching about flagging, dude. Shaggy's chat is 100% Forge Gang. Wow. Yep, it is the absolute state of Shaggy Nation. I was hoping that he would show his skills. Oh, me? He quit over some Cyrax nonsense. Yeah, but that was like 11 months ago. That was like 11 or 10 months ago. Oh, here it is, dead channel. Oh, look at this, dude. Look at this, my man. He gave it up. Well, you know what, Toxic Angel? I'm not going to let you off easy, bro. Because guess what I found, Toxic Angel? Guess what I found that you did? I found that you called I found out, Toxic Angel, that you called Crack Rock Chris to start some shit up with him.
Yo, answer the phone, my boy. You're talking to Chris D'Souza, my boy. You know him probably. Your uncle knows him. Somebody knows him.
Yo, I'm here trying to get my dick sucked. What
Yeah, that's Toxic Angel talking right there.
are you
Trying to
doing?
get your pop sucked?
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd
Chill,
come
my
by
boy.
and
Hold
then
on.
jerk me
Who are
off.
you? What?
Yo,
And then Super Trish?
Santa.
Hold on a second.
Oh, Texas? Well, Texas is not gonna get you killed. Are you sure you want to be calling this number?
I just want my penis licked by a fat predator.
Well, I can tell you right now, nigga, I ain't gonna.
Yeah, so that's Toxic Angel right there. You can tell it's his voice. Yeah, you can totally tell it's Toxic Angel. You don't play with swords, do you? No. He never quits for long. LOL, pathetic. Ring the bell. He's going to go live again, I'm sure. Who's going to go live again? What the hell, dude? I'm live right now, bro. No, something new and has to do with the cops. Dead Channel, aka Toxic Angel. Well, dude, Toxic shouldn't have been friends with fucking Mammon Sasuke. Mammon Sasuke was not his best friend, bro. Mammon Sasuke was a complete idiot. I would figure that he would realize that. What's this about?
When the Mormon pioneers came to the Great Basin, each one brought with him his own personal talents and ambition, his own sense of purpose. Each one worked with his own hands and saw through his own eyes. William Clayton wrote of what he saw in his first view of the valley on Thursday, July 22nd, 1847.
For my own part, I'm happily disappointed in the appearance of the Valley of the Salt Lake. But if the land be as rich as it has the appearance of being, I have no fears. But the saints can live here and do well while we do right.
I would rather go 1,000 miles farther than remain in such a forsaken place as this.
But she stayed. She stayed to work with her own hands and worship after the feelings of her heart. She stayed with the others and did her share. July 24th, the day Brigham Young and his party entered the valley, was a Saturday. There was much work to be done: exploring, plowing, planting, building. Worship was important to the pioneer saints. July 25th was the Sabbath day, and they kept it holy. The settlers gathered for sacrament services and religious instructions. The 7 apostles who had come in the party all spoke. Orson Pratt chose for his text Isaiah. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, Thy God. Orson Pratt was the Sabbath day, and they kept it holy. The settlers gathered for sacrament services and religious instructions. The 7 apostles who had come in the party all spoke. Orson Pratt chose for his text Isaiah. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, Thy God reigneth. Brigham Young was too ill that day to preach a sermon, but he spoke briefly about the importance of keeping the Sabbath day holy. There was to be no work, no hunting, no fishing. The saints would lose 5 times as much as they would gain if they worked on the Lord's day. July 26, 1847, 2 days after he arrived in the valley, Brigham Young and some of the apostles explored the immediate area. They journeyed north, where they climbed a peak which they named Ensign Peak. It was to symbolize the gathering of the righteous to serve the Lord. Isaiah had prophesied, And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. On Wednesday, July 28th, Brigham Young indicated with his cane the site for the new temple. 2 weeks later, in an attitude of renewal and rededication, Brigham Young and the other apostles were rebaptized. They were followed by 260 other members. This was a symbol of the beginning of their new life in their Western home, a reaffirmation of their faith and devotion. There was more to do than pray and sermonize. There was an entire valley to cultivate. The saints put their hands to the plow. At the end of the first week, about 53 acres had been plowed and planted. There was much to be done to prepare for the future and the coming winter. No man could do it alone. So under the direction of inspired leadership, they worked together, each one taking his part. Each man acquired what some were pleased to call a precious stewardship. Brigham told them,
There will be no buying or selling of land. Every man is to have his land measured out to him, both for city and for farming purposes. He can till it as he pleases, but he must be industrious and take care of it.
During the fall and winter, they built nearly 12 miles of fence in one long continuous length. They enclosed 5,000 acres with timber brought down laboriously from the mountains. The entire area was called the Big Farm. Each family could sign up for as many acres of the big farm as they could properly care for. Some took 40 acres, some 20, and some less. Water and timber were other precious stewardships held in common. Each man obtained a share in them through the labor of his own hands. Simultaneously with the planting, irrigating, and fencing of crops, there was still the urgent matter of shelter to be provided against the approaching winter. This work began early. Beginning at the southeast corner of the temple block, Orson Pratt surveyed the surrounding area, and the new city was marked off in 10-acre blocks. The blocks were divided into city lots. The cost of a city lot was $1.50, $1 for the surveying cost, and 50 cents for the recording cost. The city was called the City of the Salt Lake, Great Basin, North America. One block of it became known as the Old Fort. Elder John Taylor described the fort.
Our houses were built on the outside line of the fort in shanty form, with the highest wall outside, the roof sloping towards the interior. The windows and doors were placed on the side, facing the enclosure, the outside being left solid, excepting loopholes for protection. Our corrals, haystacks, and stables were some distance behind and outside the fort.
Mary Isabella Horn was more vivid in her description.
Our house being covered only with poles, grass, and earth, it continued to rain in the house after it was fine outside. Wagon covers were fastened nearly to the roof over the head of the bed, sloping to the foot to shed water and keep the bed dry. A large piece of oilcloth was tacked up over the table while we ate our meals, and it was no uncommon thing to see a woman holding an umbrella over herself while attending to her household duties. One of the greatest sources of trouble and inconvenience were the mice. The ground was full of them. They ran over us in our beds, ate into our boxes, and destroyed much valuable clothing. Various kinds of mousetraps were devised, but relief was obtained only after securing a kitten from the only family of cats in the camp.
Out of the 2,000 saints who entered the valley that fall, 1,600 of them wintered there. The others, among them President Young, returned to the body of the saints at winter quarters. Uncle John Smith, president of the state, was left in charge. For the children, there were school lessons. Intellectual pursuits can distract the thoughts from the grimness of reality, and there was much to relieve the day-to-day drudgery, the recurring Sabbaths, dancing, picnics, and holiday celebrations. Music and dancing can cheer the heart and add pleasantness to life. As winter approached, the saints needed all the cheer their hearts could get. In October, the mountain trails were closed by the snow, leaving the saints isolated from help and preventing them from returning east. However, unusually mild weather prevailed in the valley. There was plowing, planting of winter wheat, building and hunting long into the winter. The harvest of summer crops was meager. Much of it must be saved for seed. It was not long before they realized they had not brought enough food with them. Jesse N. Smith tells of his experience that winter. He was 13.
I was just at an age when my appetite was very keen, but there was no help for it. We voluntarily put ourselves upon rations. We had about half a pound of flour per day for each person, without any vegetables, but little meat, sometimes none. But we had a little milk from one cow. I was exceedingly hungry. For months, my desire for food was not satisfied.
Eliza R. Snow's diary from October to May is mainly concerned with food and where it came from. She carefully records exact amounts and who it was that shared with her out of their own meager stores.
October 17th. I feel greatly blessed, both temporally and spiritually. Mrs. Young brought me more than 1 pound of sugar, and Mrs. Pierce a few dozen crackers, for which I praise the Lord.
John Lyman Smith assessed the meat that was available.
We killed some of our fattest cattle to help along, and they were so poor that they were unsaleable, except upon compulsion.
They were thin and tough indeed. There was not even enough fat on them to render lard for soap. By February, many were near starvation. Hunger drove them to the hills in search of the native vegetables. Following the custom of the Indians, they found thistle greens, and their boiled roots were good for food. The bulb of the sago lily became a staple. That which happened to one person affected the entire community. In February, one of the children died, probably from eating poisonous vegetables. Eliza R. Snow wrote,
The angel of death, with a sudden blow, in the season of youth, has laid him low. In a time when the heart's warm springs were ripe with the hopes and the prospects of future life.
Spring did come, and with it mounting hopes. The winter wheat began to show green in the fields, and in April, some men returned from California with 100 cows, some potatoes, and a few bushels of wheat. John Lyman Smith wrote about it later.
My father got 8 small potatoes, from which he raised 1 bushel, which we took great care of for seed.
On April 16th, John Steele wrote,
Green stuff is coming up very fast. Wheat and corn and beans and peas are all up and looking grand. The grass is 6 inches high.
Now all hands were busy with the spring work, planting, irrigating, fencing, becoming accustomed to farming in the new environment. On May 27th, Harriet Young wrote in her husband Lorenzo's diary.
We have grappled with the frost, but today, to our astonishment, the crickets came by millions, sweeping everything before them. We went out with brush and undertook to drive them, but they were too strong for us.
Night brought new frosts, morning, new crickets. The next day, May 28th, Eliza R. Snow wrote,
This morning's frost, in unison with the ravages of the crickets for a few days past, produces many sighs and occasionally some long faces.
It seemed impossible to drown them. We endeavored to make head against this new enemy, armed with sticks and clubs. All the people near us, male and female, turned out. It was wearisome work contending against such fearful odds.
The work was not merely wearisome, it was discouraging. The saints began to think of fleeing the valley.
The cry is now raised, we cannot live here. Away to California. The faith of many is shaken.
John Young, a counselor in the presiding high council, urged that an express be sent to warn Brigham Young not to send any more saints to the valley. They would all starve to death. Other leaders were determined to stay. When John Neff quit building on his grain mill, expecting there would be no grain to grind, State President John Smith assured him there would be grain and offered to secure him against any loss he might suffer by finishing his building. Brother Neff finished his mill. Native gulls from the nearby Great Salt Lake finally brought hope after weeks of suffering. John Lyman Smith wrote of the event in his personal history.
Early one morning, as I passed the corner of our cabin, I heard a sound as of a furious wind. I was walking slowly with bowed head, and raising my eyes, saw the sky filled with white birds, which came from the west and settled upon our fields, covering the ground, apparently for miles. I turned to the house and grasped my gun when someone said, "The birds are taking what's left." I crept near the rows of corn to watch their movements. They were so much engaged that they scarcely noticed me. I approached within a few feet and saw they touched no green thing, but seemed intent on trying which could gorge the greatest number of crickets, going over the ground 2 or 3 times.
The seagulls disgorged the indigestible portions and continued eating the crickets.
The gulls came every morning for about 3 weeks.
Can it be wondered that we look with affection upon our deliverers?
It seems the hand of the Lord is in our favor.
The harvest was barely adequate, and the saints stored seed and prepared foodstuffs for the winter ahead. Now it was time to look to future settlements. Brigham Young returned from the east and directed groups of saints to spread out to the north and south to form other colonies. Already, Peregrine Sessions and Samuel Brown had gone north to Bountiful, seeking fresh range for their cattle. James Brown and his sons, with others from the Mormon Battalion, had bought a ranch from Miles Goodyear, a fur trapper on the Weber River farther north. Others of the most energetic and talented men were chosen to establish new colonies still farther afield. Brigham Young supervised it all. He envisioned a vast Mormon corridor, a line of settlements from north of Salt Lake City to south of a California seaport. This vast Mormon empire would draw strength from the missionary effort and the saints' own vigor. Here God's children could gather to enjoy the blessings of his kingdom. Here they would worship their God, build the temple, stand as an ensign to all the world for the gathering of all nations. Here would the prophecy be fulfilled as spoken by Isaiah.
And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. And it shall come to pass in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Mormons are so... Hold on a second. Hey, what's up, Vardinian? Burger Boy, the Bible said not to eat what crawls the earth. Exactly. I just can't stop thinking about it raining grubs.
The Mormon problem? Right or wrong, something must be done.
But if a true love of the Constitution and the wholesome laws of the Union are to be the criterion, then most assuredly does Utah shine peerless among her sisters. It is both a right and the imperative duty of Congress to prohibit those twin relics of barbarism, polygamy, and slavery.
What is the cause of the hostile feelings against this people? All hell is moved against them because the kingdoms of darkness are in danger. All hell is moved against this people because we are of one heart and of one mind.
We're gonna scalp Brigham!
In the summer of 1857, Abraham O. Smoot, carrying the mail from Salt Lake City to Independence, Missouri, heard incredible news. The United States Army was coming west to quell a supposed rebellion in Utah Territory. In 1847, the first Mormon pioneers had entered the Salt Lake Valley, leaving behind mobs and persecution, but bringing with them the American flag. Barely had the dust settled from their wagons than they were applying for admission into the Union as the state of Deseret. Those in the federal government rejected the proposal to create a state covering such a large area. Instead, they reduced the boundaries of the proposed state, changed the name, and in 1850 created the Territory of Utah, appointing Brigham Young as governor. Under his direction, there were soon settlements throughout the territory. It seemed the Saints had reached a safe haven at last. Then, in 1857, Judge William W. Drummond fanned the fires of political persecution which had been burning for some years. He had served in Utah during the previous 2 years as a federal district judge, but had antagonized the Mormon community by his corrupt administration and personal morals. He finally left Utah in the face of social ostracism. His animosity toward the Saints was evident in his letter of resignation. In that document, he alleged that the Mormon Church was not obedient to the laws enacted by the United States Congress. That there was no law but a secret organization called the priesthood, set apart in the territory to take lives and property. And that Supreme Court records had been destroyed by order of Brigham Young. These and other charges made by critics of the church in the territory arrived in Washington at a time when the Mormons, along with slavery, had become a political issue. John C. Fremont was the presidential candidate of the newly organized Republican Party, whose platform took the position that it is both the right and the imperative duty of Congress to prohibit those twin relics of barbarism, polygamy, and slavery. The Democrats, on the other hand, had stressed squatter sovereignty, which would allow each state to determine whether to allow slavery within its borders. It was felt that such self-rule would also allow them to determine which forms of marriage to permit. It appears that President Buchanan, in order to prove that the Democrats were as thoroughly anti-polygamy as the Republicans, considered it necessary to approve an army expedition to Utah, to accompany a new governor, Alfred E. Cumming, to replace Brigham Young, and to put down the supposed treasonous rebellion. In May of 1857, United States troops gathered from throughout the United States to Fort Leavenworth, preparatory to the Western March. It was at this time that Abraham O. Smoot verified the news of the troop movements and their purpose. He returned west immediately, averaging 50 miles a day in his carriage. In company with Judson Stoddard and Orrin Porter Rockwell, he reached Salt Lake City only to find it deserted. Most of the Saints had gone to Silver Lake in Big Cottonwood Canyon, now known as Brighton, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of their entering the Salt Lake Valley. Brigham Young waited until evening to make a public announcement of the Army's approach. He later commented,
10 years ago, a few of the elders arrived here and began to plow and plant seeds. While speaking to the brethren on that day, I said, if the people of the United States will let us alone for 10 years, we will ask no odds from them. And 10 years from that very day, we had a message that the government had stopped the mail and ordered 2,500 troops to come here. We will resist aggression by making appeal to God and our own right arms.
The Saints, bullied and burned out of Missouri and Illinois, although not wanting to fight, were determined not to be caught unprepared. Missionaries in England, Canada, and Hawaii were called home. And those in outlying settlements were called into the Salt Lake Valley to help fortify against the enemy. Daniel H. Wells was assigned as the commanding general of the Utah militia, and soon, on Temple Square, the Saints were manufacturing firearms instead of building their temple. Meanwhile, the United States Army approached. Captain Stuart Van Vliet traveled to Salt Lake City ahead of the troops to make arrangements to house the Army and find forage for their animals when they arrived. Captain Van Vliet was invited to attend services in the old tabernacle on Temple Square. There he was shown the unity of the Saints. Apostle John Taylor asked the congregation,
Would you, if necessary, brethren, put the torch to your buildings and lay them in ashes and wander homeless in the mountains? All you that are willing to set fire to your property, rather than submit to military rule and oppression, manifest it by raising your hands.
The congregation unanimously raised their hands. Captain Van Vliet quickly returned to South Pass to meet the Army. He told them they had better not enter the valley. The Mormons were prepared. The Saints fortified Echo Canyon, 40 miles northeast of Salt Lake City, with 1,100 men. Still others were sent out as scouts. This group cached their supplies near Devil's Gate and kept a constant stream of riders traveling back and forth to Salt Lake to keep Brigham Young informed of the Army's position. And under the direction of Lot Smith, bands of men were instructed to burn the government wagons, run their cattle off, and keep them from sleep by staging surprise night raids, but never to take human life. Lot Smith described his activities.
On nearing the wagons, I inquired after the captain of the train. Mr. Dawson stepped out and said that he was the man. I told him that I had a little business with him. He inquired the nature of it, and I replied by requesting him to get all of his property as quickly as possible out of the wagons, for I meant to put a little fire into them. I told him that I'd give him a wagon load of provisions. He begged me not to burn the train while he was in sight, and said it would ruin his reputation as a wagon master. I told him not to be squeamish, that the trains burned very nicely. I had seen them before, and that we didn't have time to be ceremonious.
The harassment by Lot Smith and his band continued. 72 wagons burned with about 300,000 pounds of food. They even captured 1,400 head of cattle and brought them back to the valley. And as winter closed rapidly down on the Army, now under the command of Colonel Albert Sidney Johnston, Lot Smith's band burned the prairies before them, leaving very little grazing lands for their animals. With the temperatures ranging from 15 above to 44 below zero, the Army pressed on. It was no longer a matter of glory for the soldiers, but whether they made it to their refuge, Fort Bridger, for winter quarters. It took them 15 days to travel the last 35 miles to the fort, only to find it had recently been burned to the ground by the Mormons, who had purchased it 2 years earlier. Only a single stone wall was left to offer protection from the mountain winter. Here, the Army set up what they called Camp Scott, while some 300 yards away, Governor and Mrs. Cumming, with other government officials, dwelt in a small settlement of tents and dugouts. With the Army stopped in Wyoming for the winter, the Saints felt their prayers had been answered. The Army had not come to Utah.
Come, brethren, listen to my song, doo-dah, doo-dah. I don't intend to keep you long, oh, doo-dah day. About Uncle Sam I'm gonna sing, doo-dah, doo-dah. He swears destruction on us to bring, oh, doo-dah day. Let hands be your hand, I bring 'em come to stand. And if our enemies do appear, we'll sweep them from the land.
February of 1858, Colonel Thomas Kane arrived in Salt Lake City as an unofficial emissary from President Buchanan. Colonel Kane, a longtime friend of the Mormons, had offered his services as a mediator. He was warmly received by Brigham Young and other leading authorities, and they discussed peace terms. Then Colonel Kane traveled to the Army settlement and convinced Governor Cumming to accept President Young's invitation to enter the city without an Army escort. It was April when he and Governor Cumming set out for Salt Lake City. As they came down Echo Canyon, many night bonfires along the ridge gave the false impression that the Mormons were present in great strength. In Salt Lake City, Governor Cumming was received with all due respect. He examined the public records and reported to Washington that all was in order, contrary to Judge Drummond's accusations. At the same time, under directions from Brigham Young, 30,000 saints in the valley were leaving their homes, moving 600 wagons a day towards Utah County, some 30 miles south of Salt Lake City. President Young had instructed the saints that they were to trust in God, to go into the desert and not fight. Back east, editorial pressure had been devastating for the Buchanan presidency. The so-called Utah expedition had become Buchanan's blunder. Under an avalanche of public criticism, President Buchanan sent a peace commission to Utah. In June 1858, the commission met in the council house with the leading brethren. There they discussed the terms of peace. It was agreed to allow the army to travel peacefully through the valley, and that they could establish a camp, but not nearer than 40 miles from Salt Lake City. On June 13th, the army left their winter quarters, and 13 days later entered Salt Lake City, only to find that it was completely deserted. The saints had all fled south, leaving only a few guards who brandished torches, ready to fire the hay-filled homes should the army deviate from the path through the city, which they had agreed upon. One soldier, Charles Scott, reported,
"It was like entering a graveyard. Silence reigned supreme. If a plague had threatened it instead of us, it could have not been depopulated more."
Colonel St. George Cook, one of the military leaders, respectfully removed his hat in honor of those who had once accompanied him in the Mormon battalion. On their way towards the south end of the valley, the company of soldiers camped at Jordan Narrows. While there, they were passed by saints returning to their homes. The army eventually established Camp Floyd at the community of Fairfield, over 40 miles southwest of Salt Lake City. President Buchanan offered full pardon to the Mormons if they would accept the authority of the United States, and President Young accepted the pardon, saying,
"The Mormons are a loyal and law-abiding people and have ever been. It is true that Lot Smith burned some wagons containing government supplies for the army. If it is for this that we are to be pardoned, I accept the pardon."
The war was over, but the army stayed on at Camp Floyd. This encampment proved both an economic boon and a social detriment to Utah. On one hand, the saints found a nearby market for their produce and labor. Nearby farmers received top dollar for the crops they sold to the military and even hired on to build the camp. Then, in 3 years, when the army left to fight in the Civil War, the saints bought $4 million worth of surplus goods, equipment, and supplies for only $100,000. But on the other hand, even though the army had left, vice increased in the territory. In the wake of army camp followers who stayed behind, crime grew dramatically and had a devastating effect. The culture and heritage of the Mormon heartland would never again be the same. In all, manpower of over 5,000 men and $40 million had been spent on a venture that had resulted in shame for the United States and suffering for her army. During the entire episode, rumors had run wild. The only thing anybody was sure of was that everyone was confused. Reporter Jesse Coe summarized it by writing, "Wounded? None. Killed? None. Fooled? Everybody." And through this experience, the Mormons in Utah exemplified their faith and trust in God. Even in the face of annihilation by an enemy army, they knew that God's will would prevail.
do-da-day. And then be a turn, my friend, just a stand. And if my enemies do up here, we'll sweep them from the land.
All right, well, there you go. Alrighty then, spot on, Burger Boy, absolutely right. Talk about a completely unprepared most of the population. Ain't no time for porn when there is 20s of your neighbors crawling at the door. Wow, yes, take it even further. Would endless marching undead be our real salvation? Certainly would shake loose daily opportunity for sin. One wonders about the Franklin expedition. Surfer posted a link in chat. Oh, he did? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. The video isn't available anymore. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, it says that this video is not available anymore. Drunken Surfer, do you think it might be on Odyssey? Maybe it's on Odyssey. Secret Mormon ritual recording.
Only the best of feelings should exist in the circle. If any of you have unkind feelings toward any member of this circle, you are invited to withdraw, so that the spirit of the Lord may be unrestrained. In the circle, we make the signs of all the tokens of the holy priesthood. We will begin by making the sign of the first token of the Aaronic priesthood. This is done by bringing the right arm to the square, the palm of the hand to the front, the fingers close together, and the thumb extended. This is the sign. The name of this token is the new name received in the temple today. We will now make the sign of the second token of the Aaronic priesthood. This is done by bringing the right hand in front of you with the hand in cupping shape, the right arm forming a square, and the left arm being raised to the square. This is the sign. The name of this token is your first given name if you are going through the temple for your own endowment, or if you are going through for the dead, it is the first given name of the person for whom you are officiating. We will now make the sign of the first token of the Melchizedek priesthood, or sign of the nail. This is done by bringing the left hand in front of you with the hand in cupping shape, the left arm forming a square. The right hand is also brought forward, the palm down, the fingers close together, with the thumb extended. This is the sign. The name of this token is the Son, meaning the Son of God. We will now make the sign of the second token of the Melchizedek priesthood, the patriarchal grit, or sure sign of the nail. This is done by raising both hands, repeating 3 times the words, "O God, hear the words of my mouth. O God, hear the words of my mouth. O God, hear the words of my mouth." We here a list of names of persons who are sick or otherwise afflicted, whom we are requested to remember in our prayer. We will place this list upon the altar and request the faith of those present in behalf of these persons. The sisters in the room will please veil their faces. Each brother in the circle will take the sister at his left by the right hand in the patriarchal grip. Each of you bring your left arm to the square and rest it upon the shoulder or arm of the person at your left. Those in the circle will repeat the words of the prayer.
Our Father in heaven, humbly we are gathered here, around this holy altar, in the true word of prayer. We give thee thanks for thy many blessings, for all of those that thou hast chosen, to serve as leaders, on the ward and state level, the bishops and state presidents, our area and regional leaders, and those general authorities, for our prophet, President Thomas S. Monson. We are so thankful for the sacrifice of our elder brother, the Savior. We are so thankful for our elder brother, for the sacrifice of our elder brother, for his mission in our behalf, that we may protect ourselves, and return to thee. We ask for thy blessings. Upon those whose names. Upon the altars of the temple this day. May they receive thy strength. And know thy spirit. And the great love that thou hast for thy children. May they be strengthened and buoyed up. And receive those blessings of which they stand in need. We ask a blessing upon ourselves. That our hearts and our spirits may be open. We may more fully understand. This great work that we are doing here today. We ask for thy blessings upon ourselves again. We will be sensitive to the Spirit. We will recognize our friends and neighbors. Who are open to the gospel. That we may help them. That we may bring the missionaries to teach them. That they may join with us. In full fellowship in the gospel. We ask for thy blessings. On the leaders of the countries around the world. Especially those where the missionaries are not yet alive. That their hearts may be softened. And the borders may be opened. That all of our brothers and sisters may be given the opportunity to hear the full gospel. Say again, thank you. We say again, thank you. For all of thy many blessings. And we say these things. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
The The sisters will unveil their faces, and the brethren and sisters in the circle will return to their seats.
All right, so that's the Mormon ritual. See what's going on. Hammer, did you see Shaggy's stream where he played a video claiming it's evidence you're a pedo? The dude's obsessed with you. I know, yes, I watched it, and I showed it on this stream. I showed it at the start of this stream. He's just an obsessive idiot, dude. Yeah, the guy is just an obsessive, compulsive liar. Invigorating ideas, Sebastian. Thanks for sharing this chat.
Welcome to Center Place and Center Place TV on YouTube. This is our history, theology, philosophy lecture series. Our topic tonight is Joseph Smith, the seer. And so we are going to be examining a little bit of the life of Joseph Smith Jr., the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, or Mormonism. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the earliest part of his career, and when he is being called, or especially using this title, Joseph the Seer. And we're also going to just try to reflect and maybe reevaluate this very complicated character. Joseph Smith has been, it's been called like the prophet puzzle. Lots of different biographers through the years have tried to grapple with all of the different sources of him and even do psychobiographies and other things. It's a complicated topic, and we're going to try to wade in today. If I could have slide access. Thank you. So the seer, what does a seer mean? This is kind of a pretty neat esoteric masthead for a publication that was called The Seer. This was an official publication of the Utah-based Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from 1853 to 1854. It was actually published in Washington, D.C., and then later in Liverpool, England, by Mormon apostle Orson Pratt. So the seer, and knowing specifically referring back to Joseph Smith, was something that was within the Latter-day Saint parlance of the time. As we read in the prospectus, the first issue of this newspaper, Orson Pratt writes, "The seer is a title assumed for this periodical in commemoration of Joseph Smith, the great seer of the last days, who, as an instrument in the hands of the Lord, laid the foundation of the kingdom of God, preparatory to the second coming of the Messiah, to reign with universal dominion over all of the earth." And so it's great seer of the last days. The idea here, and that is kind of fits in with the name, even the Latter-day Saint movement, the idea that Joseph Smith and the other early members had in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, and so on, was that these were the end times. In fact, Joseph Smith and Orson Pratt, they all definitely believed that a literal second coming would happen before the end of the 19th century. Prophecies that did not take place or did not be fulfilled the way they thought. The name Joseph the Seer, that was also a title that Joseph Smith's own son used often to refer to his father. So Joseph Smith's son is actually Joseph Smith III, And when he, for example, revised, there was a hymn that was composed on the death of his father called Praise to the Man. Joseph III was very uncomfortable that his father was this object of praise and seemed to be deified in this hymn. And so he rewrote the lyrics and he changed the focus to back to Christ. And so in the revision, it says, "Praise to the Lord for the great restoration brought by an angel to Joseph the seer." And in that way, he means his father. And he usually did refer to, anyway, Joseph the seer as a distinction from himself, for example. So there's a little bit of a complication. A lot of times we accidentally think of Joseph Jr. as Joseph III and so on. There's perhaps too many Joseph Smiths. And so in part, this title seer was used by early church members to differentiate the founder of the movement, who was actually Joseph Smith Jr., from his father, Joseph Sr., and his son, Joseph III. So the fact that the founder is actually Jr. is frequently a source for confusion, as people assume Joseph III is Joseph Jr. So I just wrote out here essentially the genealogy. Joseph Sr. was born in the end of the 18th century and died a little bit before his son. He served in the church in a kind of an honorary role of presiding evangelist patriarch of the church, where he would give people what were called evangelical or patriarchal blessings. His son, then Joseph Jr., who lived in the first half of the 19th century before.
The did still angry you felted him, LMAO. Hopefully someone shows his dad the stream where he doxed his sister. Yeah, I hope they do, bro. All right, I'm done with this. Yeah, there's a lot of very bizarre and interesting stuff around this early history of Mormonism with Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith seemed to, he studied a lot of different languages as well. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that my friend Verdinian and Burger Boy were able to get together. Do you want to see my crappy push-up regimen? Here, let me go back. I'll show you my shitty push-up regimen. Here we go. Fortune. Yeah, that's my push-up regimen. All right, there you go. Push-ups. What is this? But where's the first volume at?
The years 1837 to 38 are identified as a period of apostasy in the church. For a variety of reasons, some members allow themselves to lose the light of the gospel and fall by the wayside. Some of the saints fell away from the truths they had once gladly received. Speaking of this difficult time, the prophet said,
"The enemy abroad and apostates in our midst united their schemes and became disaffected toward me as though I were the sole cause of those very evils I was most strenuously striving against, which were actually brought upon us by the brethren not giving heed to my counsel."
In spite of the troubles of Kirtland, the prophet and Sidney Rigdon undertook a journey to Missouri. Their primary mission was to aid in establishing places of gathering for the saints. Joseph's party arrived in Terre Haute, Indiana on October 12, 1837. Unknown to Joseph, one of the great ladies of Mormonism lay dying at that moment. The prophet later recorded,
"My brother Hiram's wife, Jerusha Barton Smith, died on the 13th of October while I was at Terre Haute and her husband at Far West. She left 5 small children and numerous relatives to mourn her loss. Her demise was severely felt by all. She said to one of her tender offspring when on her dying bed, 'Tell your father when he comes that the Lord has taken your mother home and left you for him to take care of.'"
While Joseph was in Missouri, a number of apostates in Kirtland banded together in an effort to overthrow the church. Among those conspiring to do so were Warren Parrish, John F. Boynton, Luke S. Johnson, and Joseph Coe. Soon after the prophet's return, these dissenters publicly renounced Joseph and the doctrines which he represented. They attempted to set up their own church and openly attacked those who still supported the prophet. Heber C. Kimball said of this situation,
"I have seen the day when it was as much as our lives were worth to sustain Joseph Smith. The apostates were so thick around us, and persecution was so great."
These apostates even claimed that the Kirtland temple belonged to them. One Sabbath morning, Warren Parrish and a number of his party came into the temple and seated themselves in the Aaronic priesthood pulpits on the east end of the first floor. They were armed with pistols and bowie knives. Father Smith and other brethren occupied the Melchizedek priesthood pulpits on the opposite or west side of the building. Sister Eliza R. Snow has narrated the scene that followed.
Soon after the usual opening services, one of the brethren on the west stand arose, and just after he commenced to speak, one on the east interrupted him. Father Smith, presiding, called to order. He told the apostate brother that he should have all the time he wanted, but he must wait his turn. As the brother on the west took the floor and commenced first to speak, he must not be interrupted. A fearful scene ensued. The apostate speaker becoming so clamorous that Father Smith called for the police to take that man out of the house, when Parrish, John Boynton, and others drew their pistols and bowie knives and rushed down from the stand into the congregation. J. Boynton saying that he would blow out the brains of the first man who dared to lay hands on him. Many in the congregation, especially women and children, were terribly frightened. Some tried to escape from the confusion by jumping out of the windows. Amid screams and shrieks, the policeman, in ejecting the vagrant, knocked down a stovepipe which fell helter-skelter among the people. But although bowie knives and pistols were wrested from their owners and thrown hither and thither to prevent disastrous results, no one was hurt. And after a short but terrible scene to be enacted in a temple of God, order was restored and the services of the day proceeded as usual.
The temple became a focal point for discussion on the state of affairs. At a council meeting held in one of the upper rooms, a member of the opposition advanced the question of how they could drop Joseph Smith and sustain David Whitmer in his place. Brigham Young was present and immediately came to the prophet's defense.
I rose up and told them in a plain and forcible manner that Joseph was a prophet, and I knew it, and that they might rail at and slander him as much as they pleased. They could not destroy the appointment of the prophet of God. They could only destroy their own authority, cut the thread which bound them to the prophet and to God, and sink them.
Hans, jetzt der Flammenwerfer. Jawohl.
Моя русая девочка, я уведу тебя от всех этих шлюх.
Welcome to Welcome Party.
Welcome to the party. This is Arnie. Don't forget the training. When you must be squashing my bulletproof tracksuit is made by Adidas. Say no to Coca-Cola. We're powered by a sauce. Because we're at the windmill. That's your our boss. My AK is loaded. It's not to keep Soviet tanks, not afraid of rain siren. Because the trenches, we got too far. Let's go, brothers, we go too far. My people could not expect a world of thanks. Brothers in arms, I love inside a world of thanks. Fight the natural heart, crush the enemies to God. Let's go, brothers, we go to war. Русский партий самурай.
Wake up. You're finally awake. You hit your head pretty hard. What's that? Anime? Chernobyl disaster? Cold War? We are literally assaulting Berlin. Come. Tonight we drink at the Reichstag.
Yeah, I thought that would be funny. All right, well, I guess that's going to